France's Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has resigned hours after his cabinet was unveiled. The Elysée Palace made the announcement after he met President Emmanuel Macron for an hour earlier this morning. The shock move comes only 26 days after Lecornu was appointed Prime Minister. This following the collapse of the previous government of François Bayrou. Now, several parties in the National Assembly had fiercely criticised the composition of Lecornu's cabinet, which was largely unchanged from Bayrou's, and threatened to vote it down. Well, as you can see there, they have the microphones set up. This is outside the residence in Paris of the French Prime Minister, and we are expecting the Prime Minister, Sébastien Lecornu, to make a statement about his resignation. So we'll just hang on there. We're not quite sure what time he's likely to make that statement, but certainly we know, don't we, that this covers or follows a period of huge instability in the French political system. And with more on that, let's go now to our Paris correspondent Hugh Schofield. Hugh, morning to you. Was this unexpected? Hello. He's only been in the position 26 days and has just unveiled his cabinet.
I've lost you there.
Hugh, just having a little bit of difficulty here. Can I just check, Hugh, can you hear me? Yeah, I think he might have just been able to hear. Let's try again one more time with Hugh Schofield. Hugh, just take us through events of this morning and this shock resignation of the Prime Minister.
Yeah, very surprising. Sébastien Lecornu, if you remember, was named by President Macron three weeks ago. He spent 3 weeks trying to form a government. We know that it's a very, very difficult task because the makeup of Parliament, is so unfavourable. Finally, yesterday afternoon, he got a list together of ministers, which were announced officially at by the Elysée Palace. The government was broadly the same as the old government, in fact, with just a couple of changes. But then, almost immediately, it all started unravelling. What happened above all was that Bruno Retailleau, who was the Interior Minister, is still the Interior Minister and represents the Conservatives, the old Gaullist party, which was part of this sort of team, the sort of centre-right team that Lecornu was representing. He suddenly said that even though he'd been named to the government, he did not believe the government was a good government. It didn't represent the kind of break with the past that he'd been expecting. So, having accepted to be part of this government, Retailleau kind of led his troops out of the government, and that was what changed overnight. And this morning, Lecornu obviously decided that his position was untenable. So we have this ridiculous situation where a government that has just been named has, within hours, fallen.
I'm just reading that there are calls already for President Macron to resign. I mean, the background to this is quite long, it's quite complicated, but where does it leave the president?
Well, I mean, the background is, in a way, quite simple. The background is this election that he called a year and a half ago, unnecessarily, which produced this parliament, this National Assembly, which is completely unworkable, which is divided into 3 different blocks, all of whom hate each other, which means that no government can ever be sure of a majority. And now we've been through 3 prime ministers since that happened: Michel Barnier, François Bayrou, and now Sébastien Lecornu. None of them has been able to survive very long. They've just about managed to get a budget through at the beginning of this year, but we haven't begun to discuss the budget for next year, which is what it is all going to come down to. I mean, that's where the big divisions are going to be. It seems more and more impossible for Macron to simply say, oh, well, I'll find another prime minister and see how he gets or she gets on. That's becoming not really an option anymore. So, yes, there are calls for him to resign, but far more likely, and I think almost inexorable now, is another dissolution of Parliament and another election. Not that necessarily will solve matters, because it could well be that the new Parliament returns exactly the same kind of impasse that we have now.
And what's the real life effect for French people? I'm looking that the Paris Stock Exchange has tumbled 1.7% after the resignation. What does this mean for government, mean for people living and working in France?
Well, somebody said quite recently, I think it was quite wise, that the spectre of French politics now is like a bad play being put on in front of an empty theatre. It is a bit like that. People are turning off. People are just not interested. It is being played out by a clique of Parisians who ordinary people feel less and less in touch with. And frankly, the attitude of most people is, wake me up and tell me when it's over. That's not good, though. I mean, that's not good for democracy, obviously, at all. People are feeling more and more detached from it. And I noticed, for example, last week when there were big protests in the streets of Paris, and the left was up in arms to try to get the government to, do what it wants to do in the budget. There isn't the same sort of mass organisation that there used to be. The turnout wasn't very big there either. It's as if people are turning away from old politics. They're just not interested anymore because they feel it's being run by a group of men and women who are way, way detached from them. So there are two worlds developing: a political world, an elite world in Paris, and the world of ordinary people out in the provinces. And they're more and more divorced. And I think that's a very worrying development.
We've got our cameras trained on the residence of the French Prime Minister. We are expecting him to come out and make a statement at some point shortly. What are we expecting to hear him say, if you can possibly read his mind at the moment, Hugh?
Well, he'll have to give some explanation for why he's done this. I mean, it is an unprecedented thing that he's done. I mean, the whole thing's unprecedented. He's only been in office 3 weeks, so he's the shortest-lived Prime Minister ever. His government has not been in office more than a few hours. I mean, this government was yesterday, as I say, named. It was officially named, and yet within hours, the Prime Minister has resigned. So obviously what we'll be looking for is some kind of explanation of what happened. Is it the fact that Bruno Retailleau, that's, as I say, again, the leader of the Conservative bloc within the government, the fact that he sort of almost immediately last night started querying his very presence in the government. What's that all about? Why did that happen? Was that a betrayal of Lecornu, or was Retailleau betrayed by Lecornu? Because it seems from reading the press that Retailleau, that's the head of the Gaullist, the Conservative Party, the Republicans, wasn't aware that the new defence minister was going to be Bruno Le Maire, who was the former finance minister, who was responsible for all the debt, according to some. Did Lecornu keep that nomination secret? Was that why it all started falling apart? It's all sort of very personal stuff and rather intricate and rather removed from what most people are sort of concerned about. But I mean, something happened. Why did it all go so badly wrong in just a question of a few hours?